So Elon Musk has got a new poll. It says here, should all federal employees be required to send a short email with some basic bullet points about what they accomplished last week? According to Elon Musk's platform and all of his fans, they say 70% yes, about 29% no. I want to give you an update on this particular thing. What's Elon Musk up to? What are his followers up to? And let's jump right in. So, of course, people are going to vote with Elon. It's his platform. That's what he does. He's going to try to make the case that federal workers are lazy, incompetent, all of these things. So, for example, he's saying here, many do not read their email at all. And one of his, friend accounts is like something deeply embarrassing about federal employees, people who are there to serve the public, not being able to write a simple email. And other people are like, oh yeah, just fire them, right? We're talking about federal workers here. Another person says it's because they are sleeping in the office or on Instagram or TikTok. And then another person says, we pay their salaries, so we deserve to know if they're working or not. I know this whole thing is so ridiculous, but it's like, and I don't know, guys, how many bots are on X. I don't know. This is a real person, though. This is Charlie Kirk, one of the, I think he's on YouTube, or he might have a podcast or, but he's more on the right-wing side. One of the more popular right-wing people, he says, if any of the hundreds of employees who work for me refuse to send a very short email with 5 bullet points and copying their manager within 48 hours, no less, they would no longer be employed. This is not controversial. The unhinged reaction is proof the culture of the federal government workforce is rotten and needs dramatic transportation, not incremental change, right? Some of their fan accounts say, this should be a very easy question to answer. I'm amazed at the reply of the different posts where the person said, it's not fair. What if I don't like my job? Really? That's an excuse for not doing anything. Destroy the union, says someone else. And I'm showing you guys this stuff because, I want to give you different points of view of what they're saying, and then we'll talk about it here. Musk also has pointed out, and he's aggressive against workers. He hates workers. The reason this matters is that a significant number of people who are supposed to be working for the government are doing so little work that they are not checking their email at all. In some cases, we believe non-existent people or identities of dead people are being used to collect paychecks. In other words, there is outright fraud. So Elon Musk is saying, if you don't reply to your email, we're going to think that you're dead, I guess, is their argument. But already, agencies are pushing back, and these are Trump agencies. The Department of Defense says right here, don't reply to Elon Musk's email. They actually put out this on their social media platform. It says DoD personnel may have received an email from OPM requesting information. The Department of Defense is responsible for reviewing the performance of its personnel and will conduct a review in accordance with its own procedures. So don't worry about the Trump thing, or the Musk thing, I should say. Kash Patel over the FBI is telling his people, I guess, the FBI the same thing. You can ignore Elon Musk. The quote here was, FBI personnel may have received an email from OPM. The FBI, through the Office of Director, is in charge of our review process, right? They're just saying we do it ourselves, not necessarily Musk. And actually, it was multiple agencies. So let's see, we talked about the Department of Defense, said ignore Elon. FBI said so. State Department said, they'll respond on behalf of the employees, right? So, State Department, I guess, no employee is obligated to report outside of the Department of Chain of Command, right? NSA is saying ignore Elon. Cybercom is saying ignore Elon, and the list goes on. The thing is, guys, is this stuff is Elon exposed himself all the time is essentially being the intellect of a 13-year-old kid, and all of his followers, and they might be Russian bots for all we know. I think they're just digging into trying to figure out, okay, how does your chain of command work? Tell us all the details of everyone in the government, what their specific jobs are, especially your agents, especially your national security. Please tell. At this point, just think about it this way. Let's say, for example, you're a Russian entity that wants to, figure out where every single agent is in the world, right? Just for example, or you want to figure out where all of our military assets are. This would be a way to do it. Just for example, right? Just imagine if, there's some submarine commander, sent an email to Elon's like, I'm in the Atlantic and I did this and I patrolled over here and over there. I'm laughing because isn't it obvious this would be, national security concerns, like these kind of things. Here's the thing. They're actually trying to remove lawyers from the military, or they already removed lawyers and put in their own people so they can get away with anything.
For people who may not know, I mean, they give advice to the military about what is lawful and what isn't. Not surprisingly, there's been some backlash to those who are worried about their removal. One Georgetown law professor says this: Trump also firing the Army, Navy, and Air Force JAGs. In some ways, that's even more chilling than firing the 4 stars. It's what you do when you're planning to break the law. You get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. Your response to her?
Yeah, I don't know who Rosa is and what her hyperbole is all about. Ultimately, we want lawyers who give sound constitutional advice and don't exist to attempt to be roadblocks to anything that happens in their spots. What we know about these TJAGs, they're called TJAGs inside the military. Traditionally, they've been elected by each other or chosen by each other, which is exactly how it works often with the chairman as well. Small group of insulated officers who perpetuate the status quo. Well, guess what? Status quo hasn't worked very well at the Pentagon. It's time for fresh blood. So we're gonna.
So that's Hegseth and why they fired the lawyers. I thought it was a pretty weak response, but I'll let you guys decide for yourself. But this is what it is. They're trying to essentially get their own people in and also consolidate power. It's hard to keep up with this stuff, but I'll try to do my best. This is the Patel guy, so he's in charge of FBI. I guess now they're making him charge of the ATF. This is really unusual. So I think that's like the tobacco, firearms, and explosives. It's there's 5,000 people in that, and it just feels like they're trying to merge as many agencies as possible and then centralize control. That's what it looks like to me. On top of that, you have to understand they justify these things because essentially, if you believe Musk and Trump are God, then anything that God says is wonderful. Have a watch. Watch the cold speech.
And he found the destiny of the American people lying in the gutter. And he picked it up with his bare hands and he yelled, "Fight, fight, fight!" And the American people delivered their mandate to him and put it on his head. And as President Trump himself said just a few days ago, a man who saves his nation violates no law. That is the way forward in America.
You can tell from the language, it's very sort of, culty, biblical, religious, however you want to say it. These is the CPAC thing. I think it stands for like Conservative Political Action Committee. That's the kind of artwork that they sell at these things. So, it portrays Trump like a God figure. And I guess we got the American flag out in the... I don't even know. It's hard to talk about with a straight face because to me, isn't this obvious? This is like ridiculous, but some people take this stuff seriously. I mean, there's like Trump stores out there, and seriously, there's actually Trump stores where you go and buy merchandise, stuff like that. So I guess if you're in the artwork, if you're in the market for artwork on Trump to hang on your wall, CPAC's the place to go. You can get that. People dressed in this nature. You got to find 4 other friends to spell Trump. I don't know. It's like I was just thinking about if I tried to do that, if I was like, hey, try to go find 4 other people that like Trump. It is what it is. On top of that, and this is part of what's kind of laughable. It's sad and laughable and dangerous all at the same time. Because these people make these awful arguments, and the way that they're able to do it in this situation, Jim Jordan's talking about cutting your Medicaid. The way they make these arguments is basically like, trust me, bro, and then they try to doublespeak to change the language and meaning of things. So have a watch to what he says regarding cuts to Medicaid.
Because you guys got to get together on this budget deal.
Yeah.
The New York Times reports on the House version, the budget that Speaker Johnson has negotiated for the next decade calls for around $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid. That's in an effort to counterbalance a portion of the tax cuts. That scares people when they hear that. Where do we get $880 billion out of Medicaid?
The focus has been clear. The president's been clear. Waste, fraud, and abuse we're going to look at.
Is there enough of that to cover $880 billion?
Well, we're going to look to find that. I do think we're not looking to make cuts to Medicaid. But certainly work requirements are something that I don't view as cuts. Work requirements are just common sense. You're an able-bodied adult and you're getting a benefit from the government. There should be some requirement that you do work or volunteer work or something. We have that in other parts of our government payment systems where people are getting aid from the taxpayer. I think that makes sense. So look, our plan is pretty basic. Cut taxes, cut some spending, help the national defense and secure.
So the basic gist of it is they could do a work requirement, right? It was effectively a way to cut it. And think of it this way. What if you put a work requirement on people in wheelchairs, or I don't mean a lot of people in wheelchairs, but just put unreasonable requirements on people, right? Or elderly people who are unable to work, whatever. You can essentially make it more difficult, put the bar really, really high, and that effectively becomes a cut. So I understand his point of view saying this is not a cut. This is work requirements, right? New ways to require people to, apply for things, or, change the bar of who qualifies for that. So that's how they're doing the cuts. And then what you do is whatever nonsense stuff you try to do, being consolidating power, getting Musk, his bodyguards deputized, which we talked about in the last video. Then you spread out sort of these claims on social media. And so have a look at what young people say about Trump and social media.
What people don't realize is that so many young people today are so hooked on podcasts.
Well, I think Trump was brilliant. I mean, you look at the quote unquote media today is X or Instagram.
I do think it was really important that he was one of the first conservative politicians that really embraced new media, alternative media, Joe Rogan's podcast, things like that. He made his presence known on TikTok and saw the benefits of how it could connect him to his audience.
In the wake of the pandemic, I think podcast listening rates soared. And I think that Donald Trump's utilization of that as a means of spreading the word in his campaign really assisted in his campaign, especially with sources like Joe Rogan.
I think that the youth are not necessarily looking at traditional media channels, whether it be large newspapers or cable news, in the same way that previous generations were. And so to be able to find young people exactly where they're at and speak to them through media hosts who communicate with them already on a regular basis was a great tactic that was employed by this campaign.
And so often on social media, you can see those young people, I actually think they're sincere. I think they like Trump, or Musk, however you want to say it. But then you sort of say it in a nice way, say, hey guys, we're going to go after Fort Knox because, we're not sure if there's any gold in there. And when we get there, after the report, it's like, oh, we went to Fort Knox and we didn't find any gold. I don't know where the gold is. Where could the gold possibly be? And, for anyone with any kind of brain, you're just like, did you steal the gold? Can I go to your house and check the gold? And they're like, no, you don't need to check our house. And I happened to buy a new house recently, but you don't need to worry about that. That just, ignore the media. The media lies. And that's kind of how that game is played, right? You kind of say things nicely or say things comedically. Just you say things in a way that communicates to a young audience. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. It just matters, can you tell a great story, right? And right now, the great story is we're going to go after the gold in Fort Knox, and people are going along with it. I guess that's what we're up to. Trump gave his speech at the CPAC thing. It was like 75 minutes. So I don't watch the entirety of these things. I just read the highlights. I'll show you a little bit. He's telling, well, take a look for yourself.
Say Donald Trump for the first 4 weeks is the greatest president ever in the history of our country. That was O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly is all right. You know who he said second was? George Washington. That's not bad. I beat George Washington. I love beating George Washington. Thank you, Bill.
So Trump's claiming he beat George Washington. For real. Who listens to this stuff? But like I said it before, it's comical and dangerous at the same time, and that's the world that we live in. It's like what? And then what makes it worse, and guys, I really know, is that your neighbors actually believe in this crap, and then you have to talk to your neighbors sometimes about this stuff. And all I can do, and this is sort of my strategy when we go over these things, is just talk in a reasonable, logical way and say, hey, this is what they're saying, and ask people, hey, do you want your Medicaid to get cut? What do you think if grandma had to, was required to work 40 hours a week to get her Medicaid or whatever? How would you feel about that? That kind of stuff. You have to just try to deal in facts as much as possible. And guys, I know it's hard because you're dealing with a group of people that treat Musk and Trump like God. On top of that, it actually affects us. I'm in Korea. It affects us here in Korea. There were Koreans supporting Yoon. If you don't know, Korea here arrested Yoon for basically insurrection and attempted coup using the military. And they were actually Koreans. I'll show you. They were Koreans. They were a contingency of them. They did an hour-long panel talking about conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So it's the same kind of stuff, right? They're they're doing the same way that Trump, said fraud, fraud, fraud. That there's groups of Koreans in here that believe in Yoon. Yoon's kind of like Trump. It's basically we got Trumpers here in Korea, if the easiest way to describe it. But not everyone is going along with it. It's a different history here in Korea. If you guys don't know, I'm American. I was born in Vietnam. I'm not Korean. Some people think I'm Korean. I'm not Korean. My wife is Korean, and then we live here. And we witnessed the attempted coup, essentially, by Yoon. It was nuts. But people rejected Yoon right away. It was really different than the Trump situation. The Yoon situation, he follows a bunch of crazy, YouTubers, social media stuff, and their followers do as well. Sometimes they comment on my channel, and it's kind of weird. I have to deal with that stuff. But here in Korea, at least, you can see the Center Voters Party approval ratings. So they're going more for the what they call it, the DPK, the PPP party, or People Power Party. They change the names all the time. That's the Yoon party. So they're falling out of favor. People in the center are more supportive of the impeachment. I'm just showing you guys quick things. But there's a different history here in Korea. I just want to say how it does relate. The sort of Trumpy culture is spreading around the world. Here in Korea, people are rejecting it, but it's going to be different depending on which country that you're in. Korea, we have a different history. I just want to mention these movies. I mentioned before, but I'll mention again. I'll put links down below if you ever forget the titles of movies that I recommend. But 12/12 Today is about a coup, and it's very interesting, and it perfectly captures the world that the Trumps and Musk are in right now as they're trying to consolidate mafia power. So if you wanted to see how that works, watch this movie. And then 1987, which I always recommend, is the one where how regular people decide to fight back and what makes a person decide to fight back or not. And that's where we are. So I just wanted to go over what they're saying, what Musk is up to, and it looks like there's already internal fights. As you can see with the Trump agencies fighting back against Musk and his stupid email requirements. So if you want to hear more about the email stuff, you can watch the prior video. My wife and I have a discussion about that stuff. Have a watch, and I'll catch you all in the next video.